Palestinians mark the anniversary of Nakba as thousands flee Rafah city due to fighting. The United Nations warns of outbreak of cholera in Yemen amid collapsing health services. Massive demining project in Yemen clears over 1,000 of Houthi mines in different areas across the country. Good evening and welcome to Yemen Today News. I am Abir Ali. Today marks the anniversary of Nakba, which have been witnessed by Palestinians in 1948. Since the start of genocide on the 7th of October, the Gaza City witnessed the displacement of more than 760,000 Palestinians. This report has more.
Tens of thousands of civilians fled the southern Gaza city of Rafah ahead of a threatened Israeli ground offensive, as Palestinians mark the anniversary of their Nakba, or catastrophe, of 1948. During the war that accompanied Israel's creation, around 760,000 Palestinians fled or were driven from their homes, and many took refuge in what would later become the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. Nearly 450,000 Palestinians have been displaced from Rafah since May 6, and around 100,000 from northern Gaza, as UN agencies said. That means around a quarter of Gaza's population of 2.4 million people have been displaced again in about 1 week. UN Chief Antonio Guterres repeated his call for a humanitarian ceasefire to allow more aid into the besieged territory. Guterres reiterated his appeal for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza and for the release of all hostages. The UN chief also called for the Rafah crossing to be reopened immediately and for the unimpeded humanitarian access throughout Gaza. The war and siege have triggered the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, with the UN repeatedly limiting aid restrictions as famine stalks the north. Since Israeli troops moved into eastern Rafah, the aid crossing point from Egypt has remained closed, and the nearby Shalom crossing in the Israeli-occupied area lacks safe and logistically viable access. Qatar, which has been mediating peace talks, said Gazans have not received any aid since May 9, which exacerbates the rough situation they have been going through since the beginning of the genocide.
The Israeli occupation continues to commit the crime of genocide in the Gaza Strip. It launched dozens of airstrikes and artillery shelling while committing massacres against civilians. The number of martyrs since the start of the aggression on the Gaza Strip reached 35,233, the majority of whom were children and women, in addition to more than 79,000 citizens being injured, and thousands of victims are still under the rubble. Bahrain will host the 33rd Arab Summit after completing the preparations through a meeting that gathered Arab foreign ministers yesterday. Arab League Chief Ahmed Abul Ghaida urged a joint Arab action to stop the war and paving the way for a Palestinian state based on the two-state solution. Assistant Secretary General of the Arab League, Ambassador Hossam Zaki, said the ministers agreed on all agenda items, mainly focusing on politics with the Palestinian issue at the forefront due to the Israeli aggression. UNICEF called for an opening of the Gaza border crossings as soon as possible to allow for the flow of humanitarian and critical life-saving assistance. The organization warned that the escalation of hostilities in Rafah and throughout the Gaza Strip has deepened the suffering of hundreds of thousands of children for the past 7 months. The Israeli government imposed new sanctions on 5 Iranian individuals and 3 entities in response to Iran's destabilizing their behavior in the Middle East. Australia's Foreign Minister Penny Wong said the senior officials sanctioned include Iran's defense minister, the commander of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps Quds Force, in addition to the commander of Iran's Revolutionary Guard's contracting arm. The French ambassador to Yemen said the ongoing peace process in Yemen will take time, noting that the Houthis have once again chosen the path of conflict. She explained that quick measures could be taken to reunite the Yemenis, such as opening roads and monetary unity, noting that the Houthis' issuance of coin only leads to more discord and confusion among the population. The UK will spend £140 million next year helping starving people in Yemen. The Deputy Foreign Secretary said many Yemenis are suffering one of the most acute humanitarian crises in the world and are living on the margins of subsistence following nearly a decade of civil war. Britain announced its intention to provide all its naval frigates in the Red Sea with land attack capabilities. British Defence Secretary Grant Shapps said that all future British Navy frigates will be equipped with the land attack capabilities to confront the growing threats to freedom of navigation at sea, in the air and on land.
Cholera is a bacterial disease that spreads when there is a lack of safe drinking water. It causes acute diarrhea with severe dehydration and can be highly infectious. It can kill within hours. However, it is easily preventable and treatable. MSF teams are doing whatever they can to respond, treating thousands of patients and providing clean drinking water in 10 countries. But with so many outbreaks ongoing, needs are huge on a global scale. Ultimately, no one should die of a preventable disease such as cholera. We must work together to curb these outbreaks.
The United Nations has warned of a rapidly worsening outbreak of cholera in Yemen, especially in areas controlled by the Houthi rebels, where 40,000 suspected cases and over 160 deaths have so far been reported. The following report has more details.
The United Nations expressed fears at what it called a rapidly worsening outbreak of cholera in war-ravaged Yemen, with more than 40,000 suspected cases, mainly in areas controlled by the Houthi rebels. 40,000 suspected cases and over 160 deaths have so far been reported, which is a sharp increase since the update of the last month. The majority are in Houthi-controlled areas, where hundreds of new cases are reported every day. In total, 34,000 suspected cases have been reported in those areas since October, more than 3 times the figure reported a month ago, according to data from the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. In comparison, 6,000 suspected cases have been reported in government-controlled areas. Heavy rains and flooding are expected to make things worse, adding that the world body and its partners were taking urgent action to stem the spread. But he warned that the plan will need rapid funding if we are to prevent the situation from spiraling out of control. The UN's humanitarian response plan for Yemen for 2024, estimated to cost $2.7 billion, has only been funded by 16% so far. Yemen has been gripped by conflict since the Houthis overran the capital Sana'a in 2014, where hundreds of thousands have died in the fighting or from indirect causes such as lack of food, according to the United Nations. Hostilities slowed considerably in April 2022. When a 6-month brokered UN truce came into effect, and they have remained at a low level since then.
Massam announced the destruction of 2,300 shells and exploded ordnance in Marib Governorate. Massam project operations confirmed that these shells were disposed a day after an explosion in a weapons depot that resulted in casualties. This report has more.
Saudi Arabia's Project Massam cleared 935 mines in Yemen in 1 week. from May 4 to May 10, the Saudi press agency reported on Tuesday. Overseen by the kingdom's aid agency KS Relief, the project specialist teams destroyed 876 pieces of unexploded ordnance, 47 anti-tank mines, 7 anti-personnel mines, and 5 improvised explosive devices. The explosives planted by the Houthi militia across Yemen posed a threat to civilians, including children, women, and elders. The demining operations took place in Ma'rib, Aden, Jawf, Shabwa, Taiz, Hodeidah, Lahj, Sana'a, El Bayda, Dala, and Saada. A total of 440,067 mines have been cleared since the start of the initiative in 2018. According to Osama Al-Qusaybi, the project's managing director. The initiative trains local demining engineers and provides them with modern equipment. It also offers support to Yemenis injured by the devices. About 5 million people have been forced to flee their homes since the beginning of the conflict in Yemen, many of them displaced by the presence of landmines, according to the Project Massam website. Massam teams are tasked with clearing villages, roads, and schools to facilitate the safe movement of civilians and the delivery of humanitarian aid.
In the news. High school Yemeni students take up final exams under difficult conditions.
Sea tortoises in Yemen are prone to extinction, with 90% of them are female. The severe gender imbalance will continue until it brings about the complete loss of sea tortoises in Yemen.
لا ضعيف الذكور وخاصة في الفترة الأخيرة هذه يعني قبل هذا شهر يناير هذا تحصل أكثر شيء ميتين الذكور على الشواطئ من الوسط هذا يعني مليان الذكور ميتين يعني كثير يعني باليوم نحصل 10 حبات 15 حبة مليان منهم يعني وخفوا بالكثير ما شيء زي أول لأن أول كان تحصل لهم مخلوطين الذكر والأنثى الآن أكثر شيء الإناث.
هناك دراسات عملت في كثير من المناطق الساحلية في المنطقة الاستوائية وأثبتت ارتفاع نسبة الإناث مقارنة بالذكور لتصل حتى إلى نسبة أكثر من 90% من نسبة الفاقسات وبالتالي سيعرض نسبة الذكور بشكل عام إلى التناقص وربما خلال أعوام قادمة إلى الانقراض للذكور من السلاحف البحرية.
Welcome back. Aden and the neighboring governments are witnessing the worst electricity crisis in years. The people pointed the finger at the government and influential forces of creating the crisis and exploiting it in suspicious deals. Activists and human rights activists circulated pictures that showed dozens of patients lying in the courtyards of the Friendship Hospital in the city of Aden following the increasing hours of power outage. The new Houthi 100 riyals coin has almost completely disappeared from the markets in Sana'a and the Houthi-controlled areas. The disappearance of the Houthi currency was due to its withdrawal from circulation without an announcement after counterfeiting operations escalated in 5 Yemeni cities within 1 month. Students in Al-Mahra Governorate had their final exams within difficult conditions due to the war. The educational process in Yemen is facing difficult challenges that affect its quality and access to education in general. The following report has more.
Ayham and his two brothers packed their bags and prepared to go to school for a fresh start on the first day of their end-of-year exams. All the students carried out their notes that they had prepared for the first subject exam and headed to school, hoping they would perform well in their exams despite all their suffering and difficulties, including power outages and the deadly summer heat, not to mention the latest hurricanes and weather depressions witnessed in Al-Mahra Governorate that resulted in the halt of education process several times during this year.
It's quite hard for children to succeed and be creative during these hard conditions. There are no qualified capabilities for them to study like normal children do in other countries. However, despite all the difficulties, students are able to overcome all the challenges and continue their education.
Some parents take their children to school and on their way they take whoever they can, because many students are forced to walk few kilometers until they reach their schools, and this is another suffering. When they reach the exam halls, they find it overcrowded with other students.
The teachers and students are facing many difficulties as they are having the final exams during this extremely hot weather, the continuous power outages for long hours.
Teachers also make significant efforts in light of a very complex financial, moral, and psychological situation, and their salaries are not sufficient for the purpose, which has a negative impact on the educational process.
We face a lot of challenges. We don't have electricity. The weather is so hot, we can't focus, study, or have our exams during such conditions.
A year full of tragedies and sorrows for all teachers and students in addition to parents. And despite all that, everyone does their duty with great efforts to achieve their goals, while the authorities and officials are ignoring the issue without helping or even providing electricity to alleviate some of the suffering.
Here is a reminder of the main headlines. Palestinians mark the anniversary of Al-Nakba as thousands flee Rafah city due to fighting. The United Nations warns of outbreaks of cholera in Yemen amid collapsing health services. Masamdi mining project in Yemen clears over 1,000 of Houthi mines in different areas across the country. This is the end of the news. Thank you for streaming with us. It was Abir Ali.